right. So the document that you're going to create for your masthead variations is going to be a 8.5 by 11 right here. So I'm going to do inches. It's going to be 8.5 by 11, 100 pixels per inch. I'm going to create. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and just type in my title. So I'm grabbing my text tool, and I'm going to change the size of this. So I'm switching back to my move tool, pressing Control T. I can change the size this way. I find that's an easier way to change the size. However, you can, if that Control key doesn't work for your command, if you're on a Mac, you can actually highlight your text. And there's this button right up here that lets you change the font. The problem is it stops at 72 points because that's 1 inch. So for some reason they thought that was the largest you want to go. You can actually type in the number right there, so you can go higher than that. Or here's a cool little trick. See how when I move my mouse over the T, this is called a scrubber bar. It's got a finger with arrows. If I hold my mouse button down, I keep my mouse button held down, I can drag, even though I'm across the screen, it's getting bigger or smaller. So it's a way to be able to manipulate the size visually, because there's no way I would have known that, oh, of course, that's 116.62 points. Yeah, whatever. So those are just a couple different ways to be able to make the changes. In addition to that, you can change the color. Remember, you can change the color by coming up here. You can change the font by clicking over here. Now, I have a lot of fonts installed, so that's why it's taking a little while. I would not use the default font. Do not use Myriad. That is a really lazy thing. One of the things you can do as you're choosing stuff is you can decide what kind of font do you want to use. You'll notice on some of the mastheads that I showed, there was the sans serif fonts. Those are ones where there's no extra little serifs. Those are little squiggles and stuff at the sides. You have your serif font. There's ones like that. And right now it's only showing me the Typekit fonts that I have, but you can look at other fonts as well. There's some decorative fonts. You can even download ones online. Let me know if you need help with any of that. But as I skim through, each of these fonts has a different feeling to it. Like if I had something like that, has kind of a cutting edge grungy kind of look. That one's got like a handwritten, almost like Juno. That looks, I don't even know what to say what that looks like. Comic Sans. Oh God, stay away from that. Even ironically, that one doesn't work real well. See, there's definitely different feelings that come from each of these fonts. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave it with the one that I had, and I'm going to go ahead and hit the check mark so I can fix that. Here's a couple other things you can do. I'm going to switch to my move tool. I'm pressing my Alt key and I'm duplicating. If that doesn't work for you, you can just drag and drop. The thing is that's now directly underneath. So I'm going to have to use my arrow key to move this down. If you hold down your shift key as you're moving, it'll make it move in a straight line, but it'll also jump down like 10 pixels. All right, so with something like this, what I'm doing is I'm looking to try to experiment with these. So I'm going to leave this one for now by itself, and I'm going to highlight the text inside of there. So remember, if you're changing the kerning, you're using the Alt key in between letters, and you're using the arrow key. So that's Alt on a PC, Option on a Mac. If that's not working for you, like if your keyboard shortcuts don't work, let me show you where you can go to change that instead. You can come up to Window, and let's go ahead and go to Character. This is going to bring up this palette right here. You'll notice that this has some similarities with the text tool that's already selected. It's giving me the size. This here is your leading. That's the line spacing. This one right here is your kerning. Kerning is only going to be available if you have the cursor in between two letters. So you can actually use the scrubber bar to move that forward or back, or you could manually type in a number, like grab one that's already there, or type in a number itself. I like the keyboard shortcuts just because it's easier, but I also recognize that not everybody's keyboard or computer will let you do that. So that's why I'm giving you several different options. So by pushing that together, if I'm going to push this further apart, I'm going to have to make the font significantly smaller. So it's something to consider. It's kind of interesting. It's got the openness. So I'm just making variation after variation on here. Now I'm going to end up making way more than I'm going to need, but this process is really, really important to experiment with. So with something like this, what I want to do is I want to convert this into a shape. So I'm going to show you that part. So those are a couple different things that I could experiment with. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in and I'm going to look at this one. So right now, notice all of these are set to T. Be careful when you're doing this because oftentimes that will happen. This now makes it where I can't actually highlight the text. If you notice, see the text box has little dotted lines around it. That when I'm up here, dotted lines are gone. Dotted lines are gone. This is going to make a whole new text layer, and that's not what I want. So I'm going to delete that one. So you've got to be really careful with not accidentally doing what's known as rasterizing the text. It's converted it from being a text to actually being bitmap. So it's going from vector to raster. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this again. And what I want to do is I want to start playing around with some of the letters. Now, don't do this exact thing that I'm doing. I mean, once people see it, they're like, oh, yeah, I'll just do that. That's what he wants. Not necessarily. What I really want you to do is see what's happening when we right-click on a layer and we come in here, and I'm going to convert to shape. By converting to shape, I'm going to be able to come over here to the tools, and I can choose this direct select tool. It's this white arrow. What's happened is it's now put on these anchor points, these individual points that I can now manipulate. So if I wanted to, I could grab that one piece. If you remember when we did the LeBron James piece, I had you use the pin tool. That's what this tool is doing. It's letting me move things around. I can actually grab. See, when I click on one of these anchor points, it's grabbing one at a time. If I hold down the shift key, I'm going to be able to select more than one at a time. I can use my arrow keys to move things down. So what I'm doing is I'm just grabbing some of these pieces to be able to manipulate and make changes to the letter. Don't really like that. It's not very well balanced and stuff. But the idea behind this is really more about you can convert to shape by right-clicking and you convert to shape. And you can very quickly go in and make some modifications to an existing font, and you're now making it much more custom, and it no longer looks like the original. So I could pull this out and kind of experiment a little bit. So that's another way that you could manipulate it. Doesn't look pretty right now because it's not really well balanced, but that's how you could go in and manipulate a shape. In addition to that, you could take any of these. Just make a copy of that. I'm going to try, you can try different fonts. You can move things around. You can do a whole lot more. But the idea is you're going to need to find some way to be able to manipulate the text so that it looks interesting, ties in with the style of what you're trying to do, but is still been changed from the original somehow. Look here. And that was just a simple use black lines across there to mask the thing out. But there needs to be a reason behind it. But this point is experiment. You can do more than the 5 that I've set up, because none of those to me are really ones I would necessarily want to use. But that's for you to experiment with and come up with your own ideas.